This is part one of two. So we've got something a little bit different for you this week. First of all, this is something of a sequel to last week's episode with the writer Emma Newman. Emma put the song Angels by Robbie Williams on her Infernal playlist, and during our conversation we talked about Ray Heffernan, the man who wrote the first version of the song, and so we thought we'd ask him to come on to tell his story, which you're going to hear in a moment. As well as being our first sequel, this is also our first two-parter. Both parts are being released on the same day, so you won't have to wait to hear part two. The reason we've split this episode is that we've decided to include the Patreon section for free this week, and that made it a bit too long to go in a main feed episode. So if you find you enjoy having extended versions of the show, then you can head to patreon.com/hellishpod to become a supporter. You get longer, ad-free versions of the show earlier than the non-paying damned, including a version of this episode that does not come in two parts. So without further ado... Welcome to Hellish. I'm Daniel Whelan and I am Hell's receptionist. If this is your first visit to the waiting room, let me tell you what we do here. We pluck a poor unfortunate from the never-ending queue of damned souls, ask them a few questions so that HR can work out the most hellish task for them to do for the rest of eternity, and then we extract from them their infernal playlist, the 5 songs that will soundtrack their torment. I am ably assisted in this endeavour by Satan's T-Boy, the first human to call a fire engine a Dennis water van, Alex Gale. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Dan. Yes, well, you're lucky it wasn't a French fire engine, because that would have been Les Dennis. But yeah, what you're referring to is the weekly picture quiz that I do on our Instagram, hellish_pod. It's fiendishly difficult. The devil asked me to make it as difficult as possible. I think you're referring to, we had the writer Patrice Lawrence on the pod, and she picked a song by Dennis Waterman. What was it? You Could Be So Good For Me. You Theme tune to Minder.
I Could Be So Good For You, I think.
I Could Be So Good For You, exactly.
And you decided to illustrate this song with a picture of a fire engine.
Yeah.
Which is a Dennis water van.
Exactly.
Can you tell the readers why you picked a picture of the California Raisins one week?
That was they were the Sultanas of Swing. That was Dire Straits, Dan.
Yep. So that's the level that you can expect, listeners, if you do head over to our Instagram. So now that we have shamelessly plugged our social media, it's time for a new Down Soul. So who is being dragged from the light and into the shadows this week?
Well, this is the Irish singer-songwriter Ray Heffernan. In a career lasting over a quarter of a century, Ray has written songs for a number of international artists. His best-known song, Angels Instead, co-written with Robbie Williams, formed the basis for the hit single Angels, and Ray now lives in Italy. And alongside writing and performing, he teaches languages using songwriting.
Okay, Ray Heffernan, welcome to Hell.
Well, it's very nice to be here. Well, it's nice to be here. I'm feeling a bit... Well, I don't know. I'm a bit worried now after that presentation.
Good, you should be, because that is what we do here. So why do you think you are in hell? What have you done to deserve this?
I don't know. I probably have devoted my life to another god in that of songwriting, I suppose. I've always chased a melody wherever it took me, all the way to the pits of hell, it would seem.
Well, the devil does have the best tunes, of course.
He does.
So, I do want to talk about Angels at some point, but I don't want to go straight into it. People will know this song, and we'll talk about the story. I know there is some controversy around it. So, before we get into that, I want to introduce our listeners to you and your work first. So I'd like to play a little bit of one of your songs, if that's all right. I'm gonna play a little bit of Let Go of the Wheel, just so people can hear you and hear what you do. So here we go. Just play a little bit of that now.
Close your eyes, make your wish, tell me how it feels when you let go of the wheel. I'm not looking for answers, baby, no. Just driving with the top down. Close your eyes, make a wish, tell me how it feels when you let go of the wheel. I'm not looking for answers, baby, no. Just driving with the top down.
Okay, so that is Let Go of the Wheel, which people can listen to on your YouTube channel. I have to say, Ray, one of the questions that we have on Hellish is we ask people for an earworm, a song that sticks in their head. And one of the reasons I ask this question is that I suffer from a thing I call overnight jukebox, which is often I wake up in the morning with a song in my head. I don't know why it's there. It's just overnight the jukebox has selected me for the jukebox. And so sometimes I will spend the whole morning with Man, I Feel Like a Woman in my head.
Oh my God.
And it's very annoying. But the overnight jukebox, the last couple of nights, has selected Let Go of the Wheel. So there's definitely something in it that is very catchy.
It's such a... I mean, it's a great song, but it's got a real, like, pop sensibility. I thought, you've performed it in quite a singer-songwriter way, but this song could easily be redone and performed by, I was saying to Dan, like Sabrina Carpenter or something. You could imagine it with a really big pop backing as well. It's got that kind of quality to it, I thought, right?
Yeah. Well, it's quite a simple structure. It's an A-B, half an A-B thing. It's quite, in that kind of Beatles kind of, verse, chorus, mid-late chorus. It's that pop structure. That song it's been great to me. I wrote that in Stansted Airport. One night I was waiting. You remember, Stansted Airport?
Unfortunately,
it's the 12th circle of hell.
Yes, a hellish place to spend the night, and I had to. Now in the 90s, like for Irish people, Stansted Airport, it was just at the start of Ryanair and low cost flights, So Stansted was like the port of call. You had to fly to Stansted before you got anywhere in Europe, So it was like Ellis Island, kind of going in there. And I remember, one night I was sitting there waiting. I had arrived from France or something. I think I was going back to Dublin, but my flight was at like at 6 or 7 in the morning. So I had 4 or 5 hours and they don't let you sleep. They'd like chase you around with like cowpokes, moving you out of the place,
Wow.
Yeah. But then I was just thinking about it, and it just kind of formed without an instrument. It just kind of came together in my head, and then like all I had to do was just listen to it, and then when I got home, pick up a guitar, and it was done. You know what I mean? It just kind of really put itself together. Yeah, it was wonderful. So as a result, I don't know. Anywhere I've sing it in Europe, like or around the world, it has that kind of mantra type da da dan da da dan da 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 dan dan that people just seem to like to sing with, So it's quite an easy song to get. It's always like one of the last songs of the evening to leave the melody in their head. And I see that it's successful if it stays in your head. Yeah,
it does. It did work.
Thank
it
you,
did
guys.
work.
Yeah.
So I've been watching a lot of your videos on YouTube. Like you have your own YouTube channel where people can listen to a lot of your music. It is quite hard to find you performing your music elsewhere. Like I couldn't find it on Spotify or anything like that. So I was wondering what's going on there. Is it that you're not really a performer and you're more of a songwriter that writes for other people? Like why is it much harder for me to find your music than
I took all my music off the streaming platforms a few years ago. I don't know. It kind of goes against me. I know you should be there to be part of like playlists, etc. But I don't know. It feels like if you have an orchard and you're bringing your fruit to the market to give it away for free, you know what I mean, and to get lost among barrels and barrels of fruit, you know what I mean. There doesn't seem to be a filter or a choice thing. So the way I see it, guys, is the best wine I've ever tasted hasn't been from a supermarket shelf. It has been suggested to me by a friend or in a certain context or something like that. And I like to liken that to music. The best songs should be like presented to you by friends or represent a certain context for you. You know what I mean? So I like that kind of that the listener has to take a step towards the songs. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I think music has become so easy. Like I worked one full summer with my dad so I could buy all 14 Beatles records, you know what I mean? Like it was a thing, it was a quest, when now I can listen to everything but within 3 seconds, so I don't know. I know I'm wrong, and I know like I'm kind of out of step with the industry of music, but that's okay. I love to write songs, and I keep like if people come to my YouTube, I will engage with comments. You know what I mean? I like when people kind of engage, and people seem surprised when I answer. But of course, like if someone's going to take the time to write a comment on one of my songs or ask a question, then of course I'm going to engage when it's on my YouTube. You know,
Yeah, of course.
when it's on other sites, or when it's regarding Angels or regarding Robbie Williams, I try not to engage. You know.
Okay, well, I am going to save that for a bit later as well.
Yeah,
So
of course.
I'm building anticipation now. But I'm wondering, as a jobbing songwriter,
Yeah.
so I know you've written for a number of international artists, as Alex said in the intro. Once you've written a song and you think, oh yeah, this is good, I need to get this in the hands of somebody. How does that process work? Like how do you get it into the hands of somebody in Germany or Canada or wherever it is?
I'm not adverse to writing directly to their management. You know what
Okay.
I mean? Thankfully, within the songwriting world, I do have a name and a reputation, you know, so most people will answer me, you know, and let me know when people are recording and stuff like that. I've had publishing deals, you know, where the publisher is supposed to be pitching your music, but in reality, you know, it's a lot of luck, really. You know what I mean? It's just your song lands on the right desk at the right time for the right artist, you know. And it's kind of a numbers game, you know. I was working with Universal here in Italy, so I got a lot of kind of adaptation work. You know, kind of when they wanted an Italian hit adapted into the English language, you need to have a knowledge of both languages,
okay,
you know,
yeah,
to
yeah.
fit. You know, it can't just be a direct translation. You know, you can't use Google Translate. You need to have a knowledge,
Yeah.
and you need to have a certain musical experience as well. So I started with them, and then they kind of came looking for original ideas as well. You know, so it kind of works that way. But like, I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs, you know, but um, yeah, maybe like 10 have made it to radio stations in you know, or to the mainstream, if you will, you know. But you know, it's always like for songwriters, I think the new song is the best song, you know, so you're constantly chasing that, you're constantly following that feeling that this could be the one, this could be the one, this could be the one, you know. So it's a path that creates itself as you walk it, you know.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the idea of teaching languages through songwriting, which you've kind of, you know, now you're onto that subject. So how does that work? Like, how if I want to learn Italian, you're going to teach me songs?
Yeah.
How does it work?
Yeah, well, the idea. Well, I'll tell you exactly the story, and this is maybe one of the reasons that I'm going to hell, but or that I'm in hell. I played a gig one night here in Italy, and I was driving home, and I was drunk, and I had a quantity of a substance that if we were further north in Europe, it wouldn't be such a problem, but unfortunately here in Italy it was. So I had to do some rather than pay a fine, I had to do some community service, you know. And rather than have me sweep the streets, they said, well, will you go into the local school and teach English? You know, so having never taught English, I brought the guitar with me and kind of said, well, let's try singing this, you know, alive, alive, oh, cockles and mussels. And then from there, we learned the English within the song, and now they know the words that they're singing. And then I thought, well, how about we try writing something new with the English you have, you know? So we use words like outside there is snow. What words do you know in English that rhyme with snow? Okay, so they go, flow, throw, you know what I mean? So we're building it like Lego, you know what I mean? We're building this song like Lego, and in the same time, they're learning the structure of the phrases and how the Lego needs to fit, you know what I mean? How the grammar works. And then we're building songs like that. And then in the end, when they sing the song, we're working on pronunciation and listening and recognizing a chorus. All of these things are really important in the psychology of a growing child, you know. So that was the first year. I had like 80 hours to do, and then that school asked me to stay on. And then because teachers talk, they said, "Well, come to this school, come to this school." So I had 6 schools the next year, then 18 schools, and then I got called to Holland to teach Italian to French speaking students. You know, so
Wow.
yeah. So and just by kind of like, you know, we say no shit, no roses, like
Right.
from you know, calling my father-in-law to say, will you come and pick me up, I'm drunk, to this becomes my passion, and I've developed this method that's been introduced into other schools and stuff. No shit, no roses. From a disaster grow the roses of success. Um, and yeah, so but it's fascinating how important music really is, and how naturally children especially gravitate towards it, because music is communication without words, so there's no lie of language in the middle, you know what I mean? It's just a direct vibration to them, so they recognize it and start to copy it, and it's really a huge part of their communication growth, so yeah, I'm fascinated by it, and I really love it.
Oh wow, that does sound incredible. Yeah, that sounds very cool.
No, it is. It's fascinating.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, you are in hell now, so that's going to come to an end. But never mind. So we're going to start going through your infernal playlist in just a moment. But to ensure that your time in hell is never quiet, we need to help Tracy in the HR department find you something unpleasant to do. A horrible task that your 5 tracks will be soundtracking. So to that end, we need to know what the worst job you've ever done is.
Wow, I've done a lot of jobs. The worst job I've ever done, I think, for a while in Dublin, I was working for the Irish press. Now, not that sounds really sexy and cool. It's not. I was working in the basement all at night, loading up. You can imagine the big reams of paper that you need to print a paper. So I was just changing them every 4 hours. They would run down, and you had to lift the empty one off and load up this big heavy ream of paper again. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you ever worked at night, but you live like a vampire. You know what I mean?
It's quite weird.
Yeah, and you're kind of going to bed as the world wakes up. You're really, you're out of sync, and it feels like that the night kind of sucks the energy out of you. And plus, all of these lads, because we had these 4-hour gaps, the drinking that went on in it, you know what I mean? It was really, and like they had deals with the local pubs that would stay open all night and throw us pints and stuff, you know what I mean? So it was a mess. I didn't enjoy the job. The people thought were very, like, they were just convinced that, like, if we didn't do this, the world would stop, but when in reality, if we didn't do this, they'd train monkeys to do it, you know what I mean? It wasn't that impressive at all, but yeah, so that was probably, but it's an interesting story. So it's I have great affection for it at the same time. You know what I mean? The office jobs are the worst because they really suck the life out of you. You know what I mean? It's the same thing, but that was an interesting experience. Yeah.
Okay, well we'll try and find you something similar to that, just so we can make it extra hellish. What is the worst thing about your job now?
Wow. Well, the songwriting job, the worst thing is seeing the way the music industry is going, and hearing the beigeness and the lack of kind of lyrical weight in the songwriting. That really disappoints me. So the worst part of that is being compared to it. You know what I mean? It's like, people say, oh, why are you writing another kind of sad song? You know what I mean? It's not necessarily a sad song just because it's slow or just because it has a minor chord in it. You know what I mean? It's I always see songwriting as a reflection of some sort of human experience, or it should be. And people should be able to find solace in listening to it, so that for the songwriting part, I really, and when people say, "Oh, you're really good, you should go on X Factor," you know what I mean? It's like people have this idea of what success is as a musician, and that is far from what I dreamt of. You know what I mean? In the teaching, the worst part is people's limits that they impose on children. Oh, they don't know that. You know what I mean? It's not because you don't know it that the kids don't know it. We can teach them it in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So that's the limiting mentality I find frustrating.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll see what Tracy comes up with at the end of the show. Hopefully, it is going to be deeply unpleasant, but we'll see. She's good at it, so she probably will come up with
I
something.
love the idea of a HR in hell. I think it's brilliant.
All HRs are trained in hell.
I know.
All HRs come from here.
And recruiters. Yeah.
They're all our agents. Don't you worry about that. Okay, so let's get into this Infernal playlist. Track 1 is a song you used to like, or that you own, that you are now embarrassed by. So what's this?
This is Krista Berg, Lady in Red.
Okay, let's have a little listen. Here we go.
Lady in red is dancing with me, cheek to cheek. There's nobody here. It's just you and me. It's where I wanna be, but I hardly know.
Okay, Alex, can we have some song facts about The Lady in Red by Krista Berg?
Well, this song was written by Christopher John Davison, better known as the British-Irish singer and songwriter Krista Berg. He also performed it. This was the second single from his 1986 album, Into the Light. It was a huge global success, reaching number 3 on the US Billboard Hot 100 chart and claiming the number 1 spot in Canada, Ireland, Norway, South Africa, the Flanders region of Belgium, and the UK. It is, however, a song that divides opinion. Whilst it quickly became de Berg's best-selling single and his signature song, transforming him from a cult artist into a household name in the process, it was also voted the 3rd worst song of the 1980s in a 2014 poll of readers of Rolling Stone magazine, and in 2001 a poll of Channel 4 viewers and readers of The Observer. The song was voted the 4th most hated UK number 1 single.
So you know that I'm going to ask you what the most hated number 1 single is, right?
Yeah. So
are you ready?
Yeah.
Ah!
It's Wannabe by the Spice Girls, Dan.
Oh, really?
Which was followed by Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On, and then Elton John's Candle in the Wind from the Princess Diana funeral.
Now that is
bonanza.
interesting, because Candle in the Wind 97 is backed with a song called Something About the Way You Look Tonight, which rips off Lady in Red. Quite badly. So that's an interesting little bit of information. Anyway, sorry, Ray, tell us about... So what year did you say this came out in, Alex?
1986.
1986. So when I was 5, I knew it was shit. What was going on, Ray? What was going on?
Oh, God. Well, okay. I was 13. And he was from Dublin, you know what I mean? So like this songwriter guy, this Irish songwriter was on top of the pops, you know what I mean? And this was music, and this was songs, and this was love, you know. So I'm learned, and then for Christmas I asked for tickets to his concerts, and I went.
Oh.
He was the first concert I ever went to.
That is
Wow.
very weird.
I know. Fortunately, I even went. I actually, oh God, I bought a suit and rolled up the sleeves. You know, that kind of 80s roll. You know what I mean? I called it my Krista Berg suit. You know what I mean? And I had like a yellow crepe tie and stuff. You know what I mean? I was very trying to get the side parting right and that. Yeah. But I kind of did that, and then fortunately, you know. By 1987, then U2 were number 1 all over the world with Joshua Tree. Then, so at least like Bono was from literally 10 minutes down the road from me. So that kind of thing. But you know, I think that's what it links to. You know, seeing somebody from Dublin like me who writes songs on the main stage of world music. You know what I mean? So that you can see how that path joins, right? But that first step is particularly. Well, especially when I see him now, you know, good God.
Yeah, it's one of the things I found interesting about listening to it again for the playlist is the first verse. I've never seen you looking so lovely as you did tonight. I've never seen you shine so bright. I've never seen so many men ask you if you wanted to dance. That's the beginning of the first verse. The second verse just does like a find and replace of different words in the thesaurus. So I've never seen you looking so gorgeous as you did tonight. I've never seen you shine so bright. You were amazing. I've never seen so many people want to be there by your side.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, it's particularly lazy.
Place
I
noun
think.
replace context.
Yeah.
I think it would be less irritating if he hadn't done the rhyme dance and romance.
Oh,
know.
You know?
Yes.
Because that's
dance.
it's just not his accent, is it? Because they rhyme if you've got a different accent to him.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, or if he used his Dublin accent, dance and romance, that would have worked. Yeah, but he dance and romance.
But he did. So because when I heard it again, and I heard that as well, I thought I need to hear what Christerberg talks like and how he speaks. And he doesn't have a classic Irish accent.
Well, he's got an interesting background.
Like
he was born in Argentina.
Yeah.
And his dad was not like a diplomat, but he was all over the world for the British, petroleum or whatever in the 1960s, engineering. And he went to a boarding school, which I'm going to guess is in England or Great Britain. I don't know. It could be in Ireland. Okay. But I presume that's why his accent is not yet.
Yeah, he's very south side of Dublin is where all the money is, and that's where he lives, and he has a very his name is Christy Davidson, you know what I mean? But Christerberg sounds much more nouveau riche.
Yeah, it sounds proper 80s dinner party Christerberg, doesn't it?
After eight and based on
yes.
People find him quite irritating though, and not without cause. Because he is. Listen, I mean, he's very litigious, so I'm going to be very careful because he had an affair in 1994, and I'm not going to cast any. But people, the heart wants what the heart.
Right. Yeah.
In Christopher's case, the heart wanted his children's teenage nanny. Whilst his wife was in hospital recovering from a broken neck after a riding accident. So, but then addressing this about 5 or 10 years later in a paper, and these things happen. It's not cool, but they happen. But he said, people say, do you have any regrets? Well, no. I'm very happy and comfortable with the person I am. If, for example, I were to say that my wife had broken her neck, that I felt my life had completely collapsed, I was extremely vulnerable, and I fell for the charms of a young woman, that would be one explanation. But it sounds like a defence, so I'm not going to use that. Come on.
Genius. Yeah,
what a man.
Yeah, what a guy. And his daughter went on to be Rosanna Davidson, the mother. Yeah,
she was Miss World.
Yeah.
Oh, was she really?
She was indeed,
Yeah, just because Chris would play at the show,
Yeah. God, is it sunk that far? It's like, guys, we need something for the halftime entertainment.
Yeah, we need to get the eyes.
Get Lady in Red on. It should be said she is very beautiful and obviously a very interesting and lovely woman in her own right. I dare say
it's not her fault that Lady in Red exists. No. Okay. So that is track 1. We're now going to go on to track 2, which is a song universally adored that you cannot stand. So what have you got for this one?
I've gone for Light My Fire by The Doors.
Okay, that is universally adored. Let's hear a little bit of it.
The time to hesitate is through. No time to wallow in the mire. Try now, we can only lose. And our love become a funeral pyre. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire.
So, Alex, can you give us some song facts about Light My Fire by The Doors?
I can. It was recorded in 1966 and released in 1967 on The Doors' debut album. This 7-minute long song is widely considered to be one of the first examples of psychedelic rock. Due to demand from radio stations, a shorter version of the track was released as a single in the spring of '67 when it spent 3 weeks in the #1 spot at the US Billboard Hot 100. It was the Doors' highest-selling song, selling nearly 1 million copies. A 1968 cover by Jose Feliciano even won a Grammy Award. was the original song features in plenty of best of all time lists. It was ranked at 199 by the NME in their list of the 500 greatest songs of all time, and the Recording Industry Association of America ranked it at number 52 in their 2001 Songs of the Century list, and the good people at Rolling Stone magazine ranked it at 35 in their 2010 list of the 500 greatest songs of all time.
Okay, so one of the greatest songs of all time, Ray.
Yeah.
What is your issue with this one?
I don't think Jim Morrison's that good a songwriter, and it just gets so much adulation. Yeah, I know. It feels like sacrilege, and anytime I say it in polite company, people shun me, you know what I mean, and cower away. I don't know. I just don't get it. I mean, yes, they're pretty words and stuff, but I am the Lizard King. I can do anything. What do you mean, Jim? What do you know what I mean? I don't understand what you're talking about, It's just like throwing enough pretty words that people then call them a poet. And it's just, I don't know, it feels really harsh. It feels really blasphemous to say it, but I just don't rate him. What do you guys think?
I've got to be careful what I say here because my wife is a big Doors fan. So I am neutral. I would say one of the things that I think often happens when a pop star gets called a poet is what they actually mean is, I don't understand what you're talking about, therefore it must be poetry.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, this a slur on poetry, but still, I think that might be what happened. With this song, I find the 4-minute 35 instrumental break really, really boring.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It really doesn't need that, does it?
No.
Which it didn't need in the single, I guess. But they knew what they were doing, the people who demanded 3-minute long version as opposed to...
Yeah. But even the 4-minute... I would say in general, I'm not massively into big instrumental showing off anyway. I like words, so I don't like a massive instrumental section as things go anyway. But this one is just quite boring. Every time it came up as I was listening to the playlist, every time it came up, it's like, oh fucking hell! I've got to listen to this for 7 minutes.
I skip it instantly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I don't know if you remember when the Oliver Stone movie came out, The Doors, and
yes.
There were kids walking around Dublin with the Doors T-shirts on, but that famous picture of Jim Morrison was Val Kilmer on the T-shirt. You know what I mean? So, so there was kind of this replacement of the thing, and then he played him wonderfully well. But that kind of pretty vacant kind of idea, where I don't know. I think to enjoy the kind of music you have to imbibe in some sort of psychedelics or smoking. But I agree with you. I've never been a fan of bravura, of kind of jazz music where you just take a 12-minute solo and stuff like that and just show everybody how amazing you are on the guitar. I'm not interested in that. Like you, I love when words kind of fall together and really talk to you. You know what I mean? That's my thing,
Yes, you can imagine that they put this bit in so Jim Morrison could go off stage and
have a
do whatever he was doing.
Yeah.
But he could build a Lego set or something in the time it takes. He could construct an extension on his house and then come back.
I'm the Lizard King.
I am all for extended instrumental breaks if the singer is going to build a Lego set during it. I'm in. I would watch.
That's a great idea for my next show.
There you go. Whenever I listen to this song, it makes me think of a bad acid trip. And I have never had any kind of acid trip.
Okay.
And it made me realise that what actually I'm thinking about is bad film versions of acid trips. Of weird, the
melting tape.
Yeah, melting. Yeah, exactly. And double negatives and different colours and stuff. And I suppose this is probably the song that invents that idea, but it's just been used. It's too much of a cliche now. It's been overused. Yeah. And also, I also sometimes think about people in the 60s doing that kind of dance where they do their arms up in the air. Do you know the one I mean?
That one.
Austin Powers, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Austin Powers-esque.
Exactly.
That
Yeah.
late 60s kind of vibe, and I don't think it's dated all that well. But Sylvia, if you're listening, I still think the Doors are great, and you're right to like them, and I love you also. Okay, so that's
He
my
died of the
backdoor.
hiccups, I believe. He died
That's
of the
what
hiccups.
happened. Yeah.
What?
He died
Well,
of the
no,
hiccups. Yeah.
there's a great deal of mystery surrounding the death
Yeah.
of Jim Morrison. He was
Oh.
found in a bath in Paris at the age of 27,
Right.
at the home of his girlfriend, who was a massive heroin addict.
Okay.
They don't do autopsies apparently in 1970s Paris, so nobody really knows the cause of death. So there's rumours like he is still alive.
Okay.
And pretending to be someone else. And
Right.
he did have a massive fit of the hiccups on the day of his death.
Yeah.
Oh.
He actually went home. He was drinking with friends, and he was getting painful hiccups. And apparently, that's a symptom of a failing liver.
Because he'd been a big drinker, hadn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. And he was overweight, and he was like, apparently he wasn't well at all. But one of the 27 Club, famous.
Yeah. I think that just speaks to how the music industry is very good at getting people very young, fucking them over, and then they're a shell by the time they're 27.
Yeah,
you know,
4 albums, 4 or 5 albums later, he was kind of spent. You know what I mean? Now, it will be interesting to have him around these days. Maybe he'd be kind of, an interesting kind of, I don't know, some sort of Shane MacGowan type character, But that's, and like I said, I think it's not really the music or the songs themselves. It's the whole kind of persona that followed the Doors and bought those Val Kilmer t-shirts and were kind of hippie cool in the 90s. I don't know.
Okay, all right. So that is the song that is universally adored, You Cannot Stand. We have now come to the part of the show where we usually pause for a commercial break, during which we say goodbye to all the regular damned, while the Patreon damned get to hear Alex and I ask our guest for the artist they will meet in hell. And while we would still love it if you went over to patreon.com/hellishpod and signed up, giving yourself access to longer ad-free episodes earlier than anyone else, this week we have decided to make the Patreon section open to everybody. So we will be back after this brief musical sting. So, Ray, hell is rigged up with a series of loudspeakers to ensure that everywhere you go, your infernal playlist will follow. The speakers only stop for a 3-hour period every night, when they will instead be used to broadcast a sold-out concert. This show will be packed with rabid fans, and the act on stage will be given the paragon of gigs. The catch is, the act in question is the artist you will meet in hell. Someone whose entire output makes you wish you had been born a cephalopod. So who is it? Who is the artist you will meet in hell?
It's Robbie fucking Williams. Without a doubt.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do now, because we're going to have to unpack this, because obviously Angels, this song that you were involved in the writing of. Before we get into that, I am going to play a clip of you singing Angels, or Angels instead, very briefly. So everyone who is listening can hear it, and then we're going to get into the story of why Robbie is the artist you will meet in hell. So here's a little bit of Ray Heffernan doing Angels instead.
'Cause I've been told that salvation lets their wings unfold. So when I'm lying in my bed, thoughts running through my head, I've no one left to love, I love an angel instead.
Okay, so people at home will probably recognise some of that, and there'll be bits of it that they think, oh, that isn't quite how it goes. Mm-hmm. So tell us about how you came to be part of the composition of Angels.
Okay. Right. This is Christmas 1996. Okay. I had been living in France for about 4 years previously, and I came back to Dublin. I had broken up with my girlfriend. I was working in music therapy. You know, I was working with in a kind of a Christian community, based like working with music in autism and children with autism and adults especially with autism. So it was just like music therapy. And while I was doing that, I was starting to get interested in the priesthood. You know, being an Irish Catholic growing up. Um, and I've always had a kind of not an authority, but I've always had a way of talking to people and being kind of engaging. You know what I mean? So when you're in the 80s, when there wasn't much work in Ireland, people said you should be a priest. So you listen to that, and I kind of found myself on this path that I was kind of studying theology and sociology and anthropology, with an idea of going to a seminar to be a priest. You know, a seminary, not a seminar. A seminary to be a
It'd be
priest.
easy if it's just a
seminar.
I don't know. Some seminars are really boring, man.
I know. Fuck it, I'll be a priest. But then so I kind of left that. I fell in love, basically, and obviously being a priest requires a certain amount of lack of being in love. No, she had a miscarriage, which was a perfectly natural thing to happen. It was disappointing at the time, of course it was, but we were kids. I was 21, she was 19. It was just one of those things. But because I've learned to kind of process emotion by writing a song about it, I started to write a song. In Ireland, we say if a baby is stillborn, especially, they say he was born an angel. You know what I mean? So I was explaining this to my mother on a phone call, and in a lexicon that she'd understand, I said, I won't have a baby to love, so I love an angel instead. Okay. And that's where the kind of that was in a phone. I remember being on that phone call, and it was the first time I started to kind of think about that song, this angels instead idea, or an angel instead kind of thing. And I wrote a song where that was just a thought in the song, and that was just a line. It wasn't the title or anything of the song. But then anyway, I broke up with this girl. It was a difficult time. I was drinking a lot, and and I went back to Dublin to kind of find my feet. And I was having a pint in a pub during the afternoon, and Robbie fucking Williams walked in, and because I had been out of the loop, I didn't really recognize the guy. I didn't know what the guy looked like. I kind of knew of him because I'm a Liverpool fan, and I had seen him in photos with Liverpool players, the Spice Boys and Robbie Fowler, and so I had seen pictures of him, but there was kind of a buzz in the pub, and because I had dyed blonde hair and my friend had dyed blonde hair, and we happened to both have white T-shirts on. Robbie kind of came over to us and said, "Are you guys in a band or something? You thought you look like you're kind of some sort of boy band," and just kind of started to have a pint and chill, and then and kind of had a few pints and that, and then just went on and on, just kind of pints and had a good night together. It was at the time where I was partying a lot, he was partying a lot, so we just kind of found each other. And then during the night we started to talk about songwriting. I'll tell you what an interesting thing that happened. We were in a nightclub, and I don't know what the limit of bad language I can use.
Whatever you like.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is what actually happened. We were there and we were kind of fucked up in this nightclub, and a girl kind of came through the crowd and just leaned over to Rob and says, "I see you're doing a song with somebody. I don't know who the other artist that they mentioned. I think that's really good because she's a cunt and you're a cunt too." And walked off, right? And I went, it was just a real kind of one of those moments that kind of froze the night. I was like, what just happened? So it being my city and seeing how upset this guy was by it, you know what I mean? I ran after her and said, "Come back and apologize to him." You know what I mean? There's no need for that. You know what I mean? He's just having a beer. You know what I mean? You're obviously hurting him. Go back. And so she came back and apologized, and they had a chat and kind of, just, not made up, but, they ended up hugging it out and, kind of understanding each other a bit better. And Rob said, "Jesus, it's like you're my guardian angel," right? Is what he said to me, right? And that kind of started a conversation about angels, bam, 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 you know what I mean? And kind of what I had been studying and stuff and this song that I had written. And he said, well, let's go back to your place later, early in the morning. Like we were up all night and kind of, so we're starting to write a few songs, and one of which was this idea of loving an angel instead. Now,
so sorry, Ray, this is the first night you've met.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I know. So we're working through this idea and stuff, and he's not a guy who likes to rhyme. That's why on that version you've heard there, it says, "I'm lying in my bed, thoughts running through my head. I've no one left to love, so I love an angel instead." That was his idea. That no one left, because he didn't like the 4-piece. I really wanted the 4-piece of kind of lying in my bed, thoughts running through my head, and I feel that love is dead. I love an angel instead. You know what I mean? That's a 4-piece, kind of a Leonard Cohen thing, and a pre-chorus thing, But that was the end of it. It was just like a Bob Dylan kind of song where every verse resolves to the same line, but has a different meaning in every verse. So every verse resolved to "I love an angel instead," and then that became put your love in angels. Put your love in angels instead. So the song became "Angels Instead." Was the original track we wrote. And it's true. When people hear that version, they hear it through the filter of the release song. When that is the original, you know what I mean? So, go ahead.
You and Robbie write this version. You write the original. You write "Angels Instead." So it's Ray Heffernan, Robbie Williams original.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you had some ideas for the song beforehand, like the idea of "I'll love an angel instead."
Yeah.
But does the actual song itself come together on that night? There's not like you don't have a bit that you've brought to the table already, or he doesn't have a bit that he's brought to the table already.
No. It comes together that night. It's when we sat down, and that melody formed, And the thing is, if you listen to the melody, because my guitar goes down, 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 and the melody goes, "I sit and wait, down, down, does it?" Right? It's kind of on the offbeat that the melody changes, which is down, down, right? It's kind of on the downbeat, which doesn't work in the recorded in the released version, because that's just a solid 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I mean? So you can see that the melody shapes from the guitar chords and not the piano part. So then. We spent a week together, and like we were hanging around with Boyzone and Louis Walsh and all the kind of famous
heady days.
Yes, oh my god, esteemed company indeed. Yeah.
So is there a possibility, because this is I think will come up later about like he said, she said, which all goes on a bit later. So.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that there'll be members of Boyzone that remember that you were hanging around and you were writing songs with Robbie?
Oh yeah.
So okay, not that we're ever going to ask members of Boyzone, but if I ever do come across a member of Boyzone,
yeah. No, and even
all right.
The studio we went to, because then like we had a few ideas and we wanted to go to a studio to record them, and so he called Louis Walsh, and Louis Walsh organized the studio for us. Louis Walsh has always been very supportive of kind of this. So then we recorded Angels Instead. But like we were fucked up, like really, like, and this was my second time in a studio. I'd never worked with a click before, you know what I mean? It was all new to me, so we just kind of did a version of it real quick, and then we went drinking, and so it's kind of the studio version isn't great, but anyway.
But sorry, Ray, it does exist. You have a tape of Robbie.
Well, I have a dictaphone recording of that first night.
Oh wow!
That structure, which is on my YouTube, that Angels Instead. That I was loyal to the structure when I did that video, and then we went to the studio to do another version of it and stuff,
And
so,
do you have the studio version as well?
Yeah.
You do have them both. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what I've done to direct people to your YouTube, I've done a tiny URL, which tinyurl.com/Ray Angels. So if you're listening and you want to go and hear the Ray singing a version of Angels as he wrote it with Robbie. You go to tinyurl.com/rayangels. Okay, so we're going to leave it just there. You have some homework to do. So head over to tinyurl.com/rayangels and you'll get to watch Ray performing a version of the song that he wrote with Robbie Williams on that night in December 1996. Angels instead, the song that becomes Angels. Ray has sent me something a little bit special, and he has given us permission to play a little bit for you. So before you go and do that, here is a short clip of that actual studio demo that they made that day in Dublin in 1996. Here we go.
And through the waterfall, awaits my reflection is a wide wing complexion, and she knows my name, and she calls my name, 'cause I've been told that angels surround me, and the world still astounds me. I'm lying in my bed, thoughts running through my head, and I think that love is dead. I love angels instead.
How about that, eh? A little bit of history right there. That is courtesy of Ray Heffernan, so let's thank Ray for that. He's also sent me the dictaphone recording that they made on the night that they wrote Angels. So what I'm going to do in the next episode, in episode 45, which is also with Ray Heffernan, I'm going to play a little clip of that in the intro, just to give you an incentive to come back. It is a little bit hissy, so I won't play so much of that one, but that is something to look forward to if you come back for the next episode of Hellish. I hope you've been enjoying this specially extended edition of Hellish. Patreon subscribers get this every week. They get the extra bit about the artist they'll meet in hell every week. They also get access to the archive of all our other episodes. Plus, when new episodes are released, they get them early and ad-free. So please do consider going over to patreon.com/hellishpod, subscribing there, and then you'll get all those exciting extra benefits. Okay, well, this is it from me. We'll see you in just a few minutes. If you want to head over to that other episode, episode 45, also with Ray Heffernan. This is episode 45 of Hellish, which is also part 2 of 2 of our interrogation of songwriter Ray Heffernan. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, which is episode 44, you should do that now. When we left off, we sent you to tinyurl.com/rayangels to listen to Ray performing the original version of Robbie Williams' hit Angels, as written by Ray and Robbie in Dublin in 1996. Hopefully you have done that. Before we pick up our chat with Ray, though, here's something very special. This is a clip of Ray and Robbie performing Angels on the night they wrote it. It's a dictaphone recording, so the quality isn't great, but it is pretty special nonetheless.
I'm sitting there, you're an angel, contemplate my face, you may know, places where we go, when we're great and
So there you have it. That's courtesy of Ray Heffernan, who wanted to share that with the Hellish listeners, all you who are listening to him tell his story. Hope you enjoyed that. So we're going to go back into the episode now, and we are going to be talking about a part of the song Angels instead that does not appear in the recorded Angels version. So again, if you've not listened to tinyurl.com/rayangels yet, go and do that so you can understand what we're talking about. Enjoy! So, in that version, Ray, there is a middle eight that...
Yeah.
So, sorry, I should say, the chorus of the version that people will know is not on your...
No. Da, 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 da,
No,
is not
that
there.
stuff.
No.
And what is there is a middle eight that is not on the recorded
Yeah.
version.
Yeah.
The middle eight to me of the whole thing is the bit that sounds to me most like Robbie Williams.
No way.
It's the bit that when I hear it, I can hear those kind of early Robbie Williams songs from the 90s. So I just wondered if you had any memories of how that section came together, because it's a little bit Oasis-y.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that Robbie was really into at the time as well. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about any memories of how that came together.
Wow. Not the sunshine. It does sound like certainly like Robbie lyrics. Yeah. The salvation will shine through the pain, and I never go. Yeah. I don't remember how it came about. I don't remember that part. I remember it's just one detail about it. That's interesting for the later song, because when we were in the studio, he said on that bit, I'd like to hear some kind of Beatlesy type piano. You know what I mean? So because it's da dun 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 da 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 dun, I added think of Paul's bit in Day in a Life, you know, dun, 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 like the dun, 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 you know what I mean? So I added that piano there, but then when I heard the version he did with Guy Chambers, maybe in his head he was hearing Hey Jude. You know what I mean? That Beatles type piano. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of
that makes sense. Yeah,
doesn't it?
That kind of the pounding Lennon key pounding kind of piano.
Exactly,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that makes that kind of that Beatles piano kind of is a bridge between it as well. Yeah. Now the interesting part is the songwriting, because since then, and we will talk about how it all happened if you need to, but it's he maintains that he brought the idea to me. He had the melody and they had the song ready. He sang it to me and I put chords underneath. He didn't like my chords, so he just took the song intact, you know what I mean, unchanged and intact, and then presented it to Guy Chambers, I think is his argument, you know what I mean? Because if he says there's that actual songwriting happened between us, then it's a problem
He's
for
in
him,
trouble.
I think. Yeah.
I see.
So that's his claim. But within that song, there's that change of the lying in my bed, thoughts running through my head, and I feel that love is dead. There's that step from chorus 1 to chorus 2 that is just songwriting. You know what I mean? So it's just evidence that the song has evolved within the song itself.
This happens in late 1996, I think you said.
This is Christmas holidays 96.
So at this point, Robbie has not started working with Guy Chambers yet.
No. I spoke to Robbie on the morning he met Guy Chambers.
Interesting.
And we haven't spoken since.
That's the last time you spoke to him?
Yeah.
That's very telling, isn't it?
Isn't it?
So he goes to work with Guy Chambers, who was a much more established musical songwriter. He was part of World Party, the band,
but also on his arse at the time as well.
Right, okay.
He wasn't like he was like in an office or anything. Apparently he wasn't in a good way himself, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I think, I don't know his I've never had any contact with him, so I don't really know much about the man. But
so then this song somehow ends up with Guy and Robbie working on it together.
Yeah.
They then whoosh it about a bit, which is, I think, the technical term.
Yeah, very much. they teach that down.
They whoosh it about a bit. And what comes out is the song that people all around the world will now know. The kind of the version that, that's the hit version. Now, most people probably know the story at this point, that they know that Robbie Williams and Guy Chambers write a song called Angels. It's the song that saves Robbie's career, because up to that point, he's had 2 quite unsuccessful singles.
Yeah.
He's about to be dropped. They release Angels as a single. It's a runaway success, and that is how we get to the point where Robbie they're making fucking Hollywood movies about Robbie.
I know.
Right? So, why, if I buy a copy of Angels, does the credits not say Guy Chambers, Robbie Williams, and Ray Heffernan? What happened there?
Yeah. Well, okay. We lost touch. Now, like I said, I spoke to Robbie the morning he met Guy Chambers, and then I was to go back to France, or I went back to France because I still was renting an apartment there, and I had to sort my stuff out, get someone in to kind of pay the rent, and and kind of replace me, get my stuff. And the plan was that I was supposed to meet Robbie in London. We spoke a few times, and I was supposed to meet him in London. Um, Ended up hitchhiking to Stoke because he was out in his mom's place in Stoke, and just when I arrived there, was completely unwelcome. You know what I mean? Was like surprised. Like he mentioned me in a book. He called me like I was stalking him. But I was
Right.
on the phone to him all that week. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he knew I was there, and
I'm assuming you weren't just knocking on every door in
well,
Stoke-on-Trent.
that's
I'm
it.
assuming
That's
you
it.
knew which door to go to.
Well, no, I
Right.
didn't. I didn't. But
Okay.
I found my way to the place. But yeah, but by saying so you don't know where Robbie Williams lives, do you? Because the I could feel that the kind of the interest, or the bond that I had perceived was kind of fading. The kind of there was I wasn't being given as much
Okay.
given as much time, I guess. But in my own kind of thinking, this is what I needed to do now, and I'm on this spiritual quest, and I get to his door, and of course I do, because angels are guiding me, and I was in that thinking,
Right.
but then when I got there, boom, smack with reality. What the fuck are you doing here? So, okay. So I left, and lads, I left when I felt that feeling, and you're not welcome to someone, you leave. You don't make it, you don't make a
Yeah.
mess for anybody. You leave, and I went home, and then just kind of didn't give it any more thought. It was only when I heard, no, I ended up going to rehab later that year, and my uncle, who had been through the same thing, um, he said to me, "What that work you were doing with Robbie Williams, is that going anywhere?" And I had no contact, and I said, "Look, I don't know." So he wrote a letter, and his management said, "Yeah, there's a song called Angels on the new album, so." And the song that we had recorded in Ireland was called Angels instead. We asked, "Well, can we hear it? Because maybe it's similar to the one we recorded in Dublin."
Yeah.
Um, and they said, "Look, yeah, Robbie says that, yeah, you met, but his song, has radically changed since the demo you did in Dublin." So they offered me €2,500 or pounds sterling at the time to for they said, for out of pocket expenses or stuff. So I said, "Look,
Oh, okay.
it's not about the money. I really like my name on the record, so um but I didn't have the lexicon at the time, to say, like, I want to be in the publishing.
Right.
When I said I wanted my name on the record, I meant Heffernan Williams, beside
Yeah.
the title of the song.
Yeah.
But they put it on as a thank you, so that was part of the
Okay.
negotiation. So if you buy the single sleeve,
Yes.
on the single, it contains a thank you to Ray Heffernan.
So I was going to ask you about
Yeah.
this because it says, "Even fallen angels laugh last, thanks to Raymond Heffernan." What, what does the "even fallen angels laugh last" bit mean?
I don't know. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what he means by it. Like,
Okay.
I think at the time we considered ourselves fallen angels, but there was still hope for us and stuff. So even fallen, I don't know. It's kind of a clumsy amalgamation of two idioms, isn't it? Even
Yeah.
fallen angels laugh last. So it sounds like it's a bit clumsy. I've always felt, but now, 28 years, 29 years later, whereas 30 years ago, he would have considered himself the fallen angel. Now, that feels like prophecy, in that, the if you ignore that fallen angel, or you ignore the fallen angel of truth, like you said, more and more people this story is becoming to the awareness of more and more people, thanks to people like yourselves, and different people that I've spoken to over the last few years. It's just that the knowledge of growing, because truth is a seed, and if you try to bury it, it grows. You know what I mean? It's um so that's the way I see it. But yeah, it was always cryptic at the time. I thought, is he taking the piss, um, or or is it kind of a note of encouragement? I don't know. Like I said, we've never spoken about it, you know.
So in the end, Ray,
Mm.
the whatever record company paid you, was it €7,500? Oh wait,
£7,500
pounds.
sterling, yeah, sterling.
But did that come with like was that like was that like a contract, like we buy the rights to this song, or was that just like a check? And how did that
there's
work?
there's a document I had to sign saying that any claim that I have over the song is relinquished.
So it was specifically related to the
to
song
Angels.
and the claim to write it.
Yeah,
So then
to Angels,
some we're going to play. This is I've been looking forward to saying this line. I'm going to play devil's advocate
Well, we
Okay.
are
down
now.
here in hell.
yeah.
But like, say you didn't have that document, which seems like pretty good. They've made you sign a document giving up your claims to this specific song. Say you didn't have that document, and you'd been in a monastery in France for 30 years instead, and you'd suddenly come out. You'd gone to the funeral of a dearly beloved friend, and they bunged on Angels, as people tend to do at funerals. And you went, fucking hell. I wrote quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
And you wanted to take it to the courts and say, listen, I wrote this. I want my name on it. I want, my rights as a songwriter respected and so on. How would you do that? What would you take with you as the evidence? Is it like the recordings you have? How do you go about proving that?
Well, you're saying if there was no document.
Say there was no document. Say that didn't exist.
Well, there's lots of there's 2 recordings of the original demo. There's a photograph of us singing the song. There's witnesses. There's the boys' own people. Actually, Ronan Keating's brother came into the studio that day. The engineer is the bass player with Divine Comedy, and he's like So there's plenty.
So there's plenty of evidence outside of just that letter. Is what I'm saying.
But Alex, to be honest with you, I the way I think about it, I never really wanted to rely on the evidence. The evidence is so blindingly obvious to me what happened. I just always expected Robbie just to not man up, but just kind of grow up and just I don't know, but you can't legislate for people's thinking.
When I think every now and again a case comes up that the general public hear about a songwriting dispute.
Yeah.
And very often they are like, well, this person says he wrote Shape of You.
Yeah.
And Ed Sheeran says that he didn't write Shape of You. And when you start to hear about the person's claim, the claim is usually quite tenuous. It's usually something along the lines of, well, I worked with this producer who worked with this producer who worked with Ed Sheeran's manager, and somehow the song has made its way through 16 different people.
Yeah.
And that's my claim.
Yeah.
And I think mostly when we hear about these kinds of cases, as general public, as just the people who consume music, I think we mostly tend to want to side with the artist. Partly because we like the story of, the songwriting genius, and partly because we like the person, and partly because those claims seem so unlikely. It seems to me, Ray, that you've got the receipts.
Yeah.
You've got... whether or not you need to give anyone proof or anything, it seems so credible that this... I just can't see a version of this story where Robbie has this song in his head, comes to you and asks you to play the guitar on it. I just can't see how that would happen.
I don't know, and I don't know how that would happen in songwriting terms. I don't know how that's possible, But if that were the case, any songwriter would call the person and say, look, that idea we had in Dublin, I'm taking the bit that I wrote and I'm working with somebody else. Is that okay?
Right.
You know what I mean? Any songwriter worth his salt would do that. I've done that in the past. You know what I mean? That idea I had, I'm taking that and I'm working with somebody else, and then we decide if there's a percentage involved, or we look at the, it depends on how far it goes. You know what I mean? And you just work it out like that. If there is this situation, but the problem is the document exists, and the writing and the wording in the document, they deliberately and knowingly kind of removed me from any future claim that I might have. Once I accepted the money, that was it. You know what I mean? Legally, I'm fucked. You know what I mean? And this was explained to me just a few years ago by, actually, in another songwriting dispute. The Ed Sheeran one, versus Marvin Gaye's estate.
It was Let's Get It On, wasn't it? And Thinking Out Loud.
Yes, which is very similar because it's that 1, 4, 5, 6 structure that lots and lots of songs have. And Ed was right. He just went back to all of the songs that have that structure, and proved that it's a common songwriting tool. And that's how he won that case. But the lawyer who won that case, who litigated that case for Ed Sheeran, sat down with me here in this room, kind of online, just a couple of years ago, and explained to me exactly the bits in the wording that says you can't do it because of that, you can't say it because of that. The only thing I have is there's no confidentiality agreement in the contract, so I'm free to talk about it and show the evidence to everybody. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. Now, there has been a change to EU copyright law in 1922. In 2022, they introduced a clause called the bestseller clause. Okay, and it was introduced for the gaming industry, where young developers would sell their ideas to big, gaming publishing places, and then the success. The study case is The Witcher. I don't know if you know.
Oh
the
yeah,
game,
yeah,
but it was a huge game. You know what I mean? That was developed by a Polish guy, and he sold it for 10 grand or something. Last year, because of this clause, which states that if the remunerations or the monies earned by the idea kind of supersede the expectations at the time, then the developer can renegotiate the contract.
That's interesting, because Dan and I were having a little chat about this yesterday. We were saying, because it's difficult if it's like your job is just writing songs, or not writing songs, something completely different. If your job is drawing pictures, drawing logos for a company, and it goes on to be a huge success. The example I used was Dan and I used to know a girl whose dad actually was he was an engineer, and he invented the squeezy ketchup bottle.
Wow.
For whoever makes ketchup bottles.
Yeah.
This may not be true, but he didn't make. He made his salary as an engineer for Procter and Gamble or whatever. Mm-hmm. He didn't make millions because he'd invented the squeezy ketchup bottle, and he'd done the deal. That was his job. But it's interesting to think that it's kind of nice that they've actually got a law there, because most people don't expect it to be the biggest thing ever when they just do their job.
So what is this law going to do, Ray?
Well, what it does, it means that for exactly my situation, the contract that I signed now becomes the doorway to this bestseller clause, because I accepted 7,500. The song has earned over whatever it has earned, millions and millions and millions. So it gives me an opportunity to litigate it in. We're talking about maybe in Germany first of all. I don't know. I don't know the full details, so I don't want to say too much. But
no, of course.
But the thing is, when I heard about this, I wrote to Robbie, and I said, "Look, there's this opportunity. Can we settle this now? You know what I mean? That contract that I signed is now, or can be, nulled and voided. So if you are this champion of the people, and if you realize that this young songwriter was fucked over, then we have a chance to repair it. You know what I mean?" And I, just as a challenge to anybody who's listening, I sent that on the 26th of September. Okay.
Right.
Just check out Robbie Williams' Instagram on the 20. We used to follow each other. I blocked him since, but we used to follow each other on Instagram. Just check out what he posted that day on Instagram. Yeah,
on the 26th of September.
26th of September,
this year.
2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just like, okay.
This is great podcasting. Dan.
Yeah. Look,
Give me a minute.
I'm not gonna look it up now, but I'm just writing it down.
Yeah, do.
Okay,
But yeah,
all right.
so that contract or the document I signed is kind of the doorway to this now, this bestseller clause, because lads, like I get depicted like in the comments as this kind of embittered guy and stuff, and that's really not me. Like honestly, I'm not bitter. I know that I signed I've never asked for another penny. When the song was fucking everywhere, in the early 2000s, and he was the biggest star in the world, it was difficult to live with, especially because it's a difficult thing to be famous. I'm working down the fucking press place printing paper, you know what I mean? Because people see you, and there's that who sold the song away. But to go back to that moment, I was 23 at the time, and somebody was offering me $7,500 for a song I wrote, and this was the start of my career, and it'll always be like this anyway. And they said, sure, we need to get this one done. We'll do more songs together, and your name will get out and your name will be known as a songwriter. And so there was that kind of language around it. So it was proposed to me as there's this, or we go to court. And I wasn't in a position at the time to take on fucking Harbottle and Lewis in London, with my uncle's real estate lawyer. You know what I mean? It was just wasn't a doable thing, So I took it at the time. Go on.
Also, sorry, I was just going to say that also, to go back to what I was saying before about how Angels is the song that makes his career, is that at the time, surely no one's expecting the guy, to quote Noel Gallagher, the fat dancer from Take That, to become the biggest male solo star that the UK has probably ever produced. Like, there's just no way you could have known that at the time.
No.
And, maybe, so I can understand. By the way, I looked it up. So $7,500 in 1997 is $14,500 in today's money.
Okay.
Which, obviously that's, inflation has changed things a bit, but I can understand why a young man would take that deal. I
a young songwriter at the start of your career, I defy anyone to say no. You know what I mean? Because you just think, this is it now. I'm a songwriter, and all the language around my songs had changed to kind of to positivity, and like just the fact that he was an established artist, recognizing my work and saying, well, let's do more together, let's write more. Just kind of. I had left this Christian community, so this was the path now. So I accepted it. And everybody seemed happy at the time. Then the following Christmas, the song came out, and kaboom! It was just all over the place to accepting Ivor Novello awards and stuff.
The reason that we came to you, Ray, the reason we kind of discovered you is that one of our previous guests, the novelist Emma Newman, picked Angels as one of her songs on her playlist, and that's how we discovered your story. Okay. And we told her what we knew of your story. Obviously, you've been very generous in telling us, in retreading it all for us, and we do appreciate that, because I imagine it sometimes could be quite painful. And one of the things we talked about was how your version makes a lot more sense than Robbie's version. I can kind of, I don't mean your version of the story. I mean your version of just the song. It's quite hard to follow what's going on in Robbie's version.
That was always my thing, man. That was always my thing. Like, and through it all, she offers me protection. What does that mean?
And who's the she?
And who's she?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Now I'll give you another insight. Like the image we had at the time was, it's still kind of it's still a first person story, but the line, the first lines of the second verse that nobody has heard is what is it? And through the waterfall, awaiting my reflection, is a white-winged complexion. A bit clumsy, white-winged complexion, But that's where he got his protection, affection rhyme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the origin of that rhyme there. But the image we had, I don't know if you remember the movie The Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, yeah. You
remember Daniel Day-Lewis, stay alive, I will find you. And then he jumps through the waterfall, right? So that kind of like through the waterfall was the kind of image we had, this this, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's where the waterfall word comes from,
Ah.
in even down the waterfall. You know what I mean? That's the origin. Is this kind of, there's something the other side of this mirror thing, and he's made up stories about a waterfall in Temple Bar in Dublin. Where is that? Like, you know, and like even when he says that, and he's introducing the song in Ireland, and he says like, oh yeah, I wrote this idea came to me in Dublin, looking at this waterfall in Temple Bar, and everyone, waterfall in Temple Bar? You mean one of those toilets that flushes? You know that.
Yeah, the
You
street toilets.
know, you know, but that was the original image. It was that kind of, through the waterfall, I see this shape on the other side. You know what I mean? And she
Yeah.
calls my name. So there is a she in the original, but it's it's told in a first person way. You know, the
Yeah.
idea, like, she offers me protection, and then he openly admits that he stole two lines from his sister. The what is it?
As the feeling
As the
grows,
feeling
she's
grows, the
flesh
original
to my
line,
bones.
he breathes flesh to my bones, is the original poem from his sister. But that's just like another part of this patchwork of ideas that Robbie has cobbled together. Like what happened was, I fully believe his story. Like, he goes in to meet Guy, he sings this melody, and then Guy hits a chord, and he goes, ah, ba ba ba, which is that melody, da 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 da, is "Stay Far Away So Close" by U2. If I could
Ah.
stay, then I would be enough. It's da 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 da.
Oh.
Have a listen to that
Okay.
as well.
I
That's
will. Yeah.
another kind of patch in his patchwork, you know. But that seems to be his songwriting style. He just kind of gets these slogans and kind of puts them together and calls them a song. Like, his, what I really like, I liked dancing to Rock DJ, but when
Yeah.
you break it down, it's Barry White's music nearly to the fucking note, and
Right.
it's just, when I'll be quite polite, but when I rock the mic, I'll rock the
Okay. Rock
mic.
the mic.
You know what
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean? That's not
Just out to
his.
deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not his, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what he does. Seems to be his writing style, you know. So
And
so I
well,
always felt that about Angels as well. Sorry.
to be fair to him, that was kind of going around in the 90s. Like, the 90s was a time where people just like magpied bits from other songs, and it was just the thing that was happening. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it was Oasis was doing it, everyone was doing it. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to be entirely mean to
Oh,
him.
no,
but
absolutely. But it's interesting that you use the word magpied, because that's a verb he used to describe it as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to magpie something is to steal something, you know. You know. So when he's in an interview with Gary Barlow, he said, "So I magpied that idea from my sister." So he's processed that for himself, and he's given that name
What he
to
did
it
with
as well.
you was he cuckooed you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
He kicked you out of the nest
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
die on the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's going to be performing every night for you down here in
Yeah,
hell.
Yeah.
that's true.
So
Yeah.
And that's one
enjoy.
thing. Like, that, he worked fucking hard for his money. Like, there's no denying. Like, that guy must have spent 10 years between hotels and stages and stadiums and hotels and airports, and, you know, that's hard. That's a grind, you know. So, you know, I'd never deny him that.
Well, it is. I just find this. It's a very credible story, Ray. I do. I can't see. It just seems to me like, regardless of the money, and you know, I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't mind the money, because who wouldn't mind the money?
You know what? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. It hasn't made him happy,
No.
you know. So, I don't know. You know, it's really is. It's about legacy for me. It honestly is. It's about, you know, it's about seeing my name. Like, when originally, when Josh Groban did his album and Angels was on it, he credited me as one of the
Oh.
writers. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And but it has since been removed. Obviously, there's a copyright claim on it, you know, and it has been removed. But yeah, it, on the writers of that album, Charles Aznavour was covered and Joni Mitchell. So it was like Aznavour, Heffernan,
Oh, wow.
Mitchell. I was like, wow.
That's very
That's the
cool.
dream. That's what I wanted as a kid. You know what I mean? Not the money is
Yeah.
secondary to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but like to see my name among eminent names like that, that was a rush. You know?
One of the things that I kind of do wonder if maybe artists shouldn't be able to sell their rights to their intellectual property. Maybe there should be some kind of system where you can lease it to somebody,
Yeah.
but how it comes from your intellect, it's your property. How could you ever be divorced from it?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem fair that this can happen to somebody. Regardless of the money,
I know, yeah, but I live it honestly, Daniel. I live it as a privilege these days because it's such an engaging story. That people like. I've managed to become quite detached from it emotionally. You know what I mean? Because you have to after a while. But so it's an interesting thing, and I honestly think there's an interesting end coming to it. Yeah.
My son, we had a scratch card in the kitchen, and he wanted to scratch on it, and he fucked it up when he was scratching it. Right. So I never knew that I could have been a millionaire. And what drives me up the wall today. So I can't imagine how you're feeling, right?
Even falling
it's only been £3, do you know what I mean?
Even falling angels laugh last. There you go. With comfort.
Well, Ray, thank you so much for telling us about this.
Pleasure.
I am sure that you probably get well tired of telling people it, but I feel like it is. I found, as I've been researching, talking to you, I found myself getting quite angry on your behalf because it seems to me that an injustice has been done here.
I don't think there's no anger in the future. But thank you for listening to it. Cheers.
Welcome to part 2. We are midway through Ray Heffernan's Infernal playlist, and now it's time to go for a swim in Trauma Lake as we ask Ray for a track that reminds him of a hard time in his life. So, what is this, Ray?
This is Can't Cry Hard Enough by the Williams brothers.
There it goes, up in the sky. There it goes, beyond the clouds, for no reason why. I can't cry hard enough. No, I can't cry hard enough for you to hear me now.
Alex, can you give us some song facts about Can't Cry Hard Enough by the Williams brothers, please?
Of course, this was written by David Williams and Marvin Etzioni, recorded by David and his brother Andrew as the Williams Brothers in 1992. It reached number 42 on the US charts. Before recording the song, the Williams brothers had played in the band of the legendary Dylan guitarist and star musician and producer T-Bone Burnett.
Oh.
David and Andrew Williams are twins, but as brothers named Williams, they shouldn't be confused with the Williams Brothers, featuring Andy Williams, a pre-war singing quartet featuring the latter-day host of the hugely popular 1960s American variety show, The Andy Williams Show. That Andy Williams is actually their uncle.
Ah, what, the
Yeah.
Oh, okay, look at that.
If that's the one, I'm just saying yes.
Okay, all right. Well, let's presume it is. So, Ray, tell us about the hard time in your life that Can't Cry Hard Enough recalls.
Yeah, this was difficult. This was like 2001 or 2. I had a daughter in 1998 with a French girl. Now we knew each other for a month, and she was pregnant, so we didn't really kind of know each other at the time. So we ended up breaking up 3 years or something like that later. Now then she fell in love with a South African guy, so she was going to live in South Africa and taking my daughter with her, and I was just devastated. And I remember like I associate that song with that day in the airport, where I was I was saying goodbye to my daughter, and I didn't know the next time I'd see her. You know what I mean? So, and there's like lines in the song, I let go of you like a child letting go of her kite, so there was that element of like, I no longer, you know what I mean? I don't know the next time I'll feel that kind of connection again. So it was a difficult time, really, really dark time, and I associate that song with it because I did a lot of crying then, yeah.
Do you mind me asking how that turned out?
Well, they ended up breaking up, and they came back, and she lives in France now, and I see her all the time, thankfully.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, she's 26 now, and she's a wonderful person. Having the French knowledge of the rules and the Irish disrespect of them, it makes for an interesting marriage. It's she's a good person. So yeah, it worked out well, but at the time, it's difficult to get through.
Yeah. When you hear this song now, does it take you back to those feelings?
Yeah. I can't, like even hearing that clip that you just played, I'm kind of going, there's a lot of emotion in it. But that's what songs are for, aren't they? They get you through those times,
Yeah, it is a weird one because it is. You still have the pain as well as the solace in the sound.
Yeah. I did a podcast myself a few years ago called the Irish Songwriters Podcast, and I spoke with a lot of songwriters, and we spoke about that sometimes you can write a song about a relationship or a situation, and it represents a thing, but over time your relationship with the song changes. You know what I mean? It's like this living relationship that you have, that you can update the emotion. It will always be about that, but you can update the emotion and connect with it over different times of your life. You know what I mean? That is not to say that I approve of Elton John's reheating of the Candle of Wind, the Candle in the Wind for the Lady Diana thing. That was atrocious.
We had the poet Claire Pollard picked it on Hellish, and one of the things she said was it's like chipping the name off somebody else's gravestone.
That's exactly what it is.
Perfect, isn't it? Yeah. It's
exactly
spot on. That is annoying.
Yeah. You've just changed the meaning for everybody. It's like it's irresponsible.
Because it's a song that the original song fit the situation with like
Perfectly.
what happened to Diana. And we didn't need it rewriting to be specifically about Diana. Funnily enough, so this is the second time in this episode this has come up, because obviously we talked about it a little bit earlier with Krista Berg and Something About the Way You Look Tonight on which is a double A side with Candle in the Wind. So that's technically a number one hit as well. When I went to find a recording of Krista Berg's voice to hear what he sounded like, because I wasn't sure how he should be pronouncing dance and romance. Dance but not romance.
You could sing it right, Dan.
There you go. I don't have to. Apart from I can't sing, but never mind. And the thing I found, the interview I found, was an interview with Krista Berg at Diana's funeral.
Oh, wow.
And they were talking about how he had been Diana's favourite singer, and that he had written a tribute song for Diana that week that Sarah Ferguson had asked him to finish, and then they played the Krista Berg's original syrupy Diana tribute song, which was all about the stars are going out and there's a new star in heaven tonight, that kind of laying it on thick.
It went la 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 la.
Yeah. But he and it made me think of it's so weird that Elton John rewrote a song where Krista Berg had written an original one, and then the B side of the Elton John song, or the double A side, is also a rip off of a Krista Berg song. I bet Krista Berg was fuming that week.
And he couldn't let anyone know either, because he had to be all sad.
Yeah.
No emotion.
Yeah.
Oh God, Chris, this has hit you hard.
It's so hard.
I just loved her so much.
And then it's number one.
She was always such a big fan.
Yeah, all those lovely royalties.
Yeah, poor old Chris. Okay, so that is the song that reminds you of a hard time in your life. Track 4 is a track you hate by an artist you love. So what have we got for this?
This is John Lennon. I love John Lennon, but the look of the Irish is an abomination.
If we could make change with the morning dew, the world would be like way back. Let's walk over rainbows like leprechauns. The world would be one big party star.
Okay, so Alex, can we have some song facts about Luck of the Irish by John Lennon and Yoko Ono?
Certainly. This track was written by John Lennon and Yoko Ono and was first released on their 1972 Plastic Ono Band album Sometime in New York City. It was written as a protest song, with John Lennon providing harsh, castigating comment on the historic British rule of Ireland, while Yoko Ono lightened the mood with occasional diversions into leprechauns, shamrocks, and the Blarney Stone. The track was scheduled to be the first single from the album, and
What?
the single did go out to several disc jockeys, but the official release was pulled and replaced by another track whose name I won't be touching with a barge pole due to the DJ's negative
I
responses.
know what that song is. Okay. That song is called Woman is the Something of the World.
Oh
is that
yeah,
right?
Yes,
yeah,
that's
Yeah.
the one.
yeah.
Okay. Crikey. Okay, so Ray, let's start with your love of John Lennon first before we get into this.
Yeah.
So where
Well, yeah,
where is this
obviously-
born from?
Well, obviously, I love the Beatles. The Beatles was they're instrumental. Like when I read a biography about the Beatles when I was about 12, that was called "The Love You Make," and it based on that last line they ever wrote together, which was, "And in the end, the love you make is equal, the love you take is equal to the love you make." And I just thought that was so noble, you know, just to live your life writing lyrics and writing songs, and you know, I just thought, wow, if I could get good at that, that would be amazing. So I just know everything about the Beatles, and I love them, and I love the music. So John Lennon was he was like the protest lyricist side of it after the Beatles and stuff. But this album is shit. This entire album is terrible, like really an embarrassment, you know. Like it sounds like thrown together. The production is awful. It's that kind of hissy, high end kind of recording everywhere, and her voice does my head in. And that song in particular, like I admire John's stance, you know, like to talk about, you know, if you had the look of the Irish, you'd wish you were English instead. You know, there's something in that, but then the tropes and the cliches, like if we could walk over the rainbows, there'd be shamrocks all over the world. We'd be laughing. What are you talking? Like these are the things that Irish people hate. Like these stereotypical images of Ireland of, hey, be Garish or I'm Irish. You know what I mean? It's like, come on. And I can't believe that John didn't step in and go, listen, love, you've missed the mark on this one. You know what I mean? Because obviously,
Do you think that Yoko wrote the verses that she sings?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I think it's John throwing Yoko under the bus.
Oh, yeah?
This is the shit bit, Yoko. You can sing it.
I don't know about that. I think he was sort of, I mean, they obviously had something very special together, but that led to Yoko Ono getting to do a lot of things that perhaps her talent wouldn't have led her to do in other circumstances.
Yeah.
There's a really good Beatles book that came out a couple of years ago called 1, 2, 3, 4 by Craig Brown. I don't know if either of you have seen this book.
No.
It's really good. It's a biography of all four of them, but it's done in a really interesting way. It's like little episodes from their lives, and there's lots of interesting stuff in there. But one of the chapters is about Yoko, and he talks about how Yoko, a lot of what, and this is a theme that is developing, a lot of Yoko's art, her reputation as a conceptual artist, is stolen from somebody else. Like all of her big ideas that have become famous because of her association with the Beatles are direct rip-offs of something else. Like there's the famous one that there was an apple. Yeah, it's an interesting theme.
Recurring theme tonight. Yeah.
But I mean, I'd still say there's an argument to say that Yoko's really important to the Beatles because
She breaks them up.
yeah, well, I was going to say that she brings in an avant-garde sensibility to John's work that wasn't there before. So even if she has stolen stuff off of other people, the fact that she comes in and then there's something different, a different chord is added to his palette, I would say. But you are right, Ray. This is shit. One of the things I hate about it is it has slant rhymes, so he has to go brigands rather than brigands, and he has to say Ireland, to make it rhyme with divide the land. Yeah. Ireland. And
Yeah.
also, he says, in the pool, they told us the story.
Yeah.
I have
That's
never heard anyone
the
refer to
Liverpool,
Liverpool
yeah.
as the pool.
I don't know. I mean, we grew up quite near there, Dan, and
Yeah.
I don't think people say. I did a bit. His history's a bit off as well because he's having a go at the English for 1,000 years, and 1,000 years ago,
Have you
it
looked this
wasn't.
up?
No, but there wasn't even the English then. Like they hadn't even been invaded by the fucking Normans
still
at
the
that
Picts,
point. It was
yeah.
the Vikings that were giving the Irish shit at that point.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
there were Anglo-Saxons. The Normans came.
The Anglo-Saxons were not fucking having a go at the Irish.
Well,
Not
I
yet.
don't know. I wouldn't put it past them.
No, but there's a great video of when John Lennon is playing with Chuck Berry for the
Yes.
first time. Have you seen that video?
Oh, it's
No, I
wonderful.
haven't. What is
Chuck
it?
Berry's face.
Oh, did you see it? Because she just takes a solo. She just like. they're
Oh,
in the
no
middle of-
way!
Yeah, she just like, but starts
It's
like
like
her
a
solo.
screaming solo, isn't it?
And like, check out Chuck Berry's face.
Chuck
What
Berry and
the
John Lennon's
fuck?
faces are together at the microphone.
Yeah,
You know when they
yeah.
do that sort of the thing.
Yeah.
And Chuck Berry's eyebrows just go through the roof.
Oh, I have not seen that. I'm going to
check
have to
it
look
out.
that up as well.
Check it out. No, but
Wow.
like even when you look at the Beatles documentary, the one on Disney,
Yeah.
to
Get
have
Back.
her in the room like that, like it has become a trope, like among bands, like Who Brought Yoko? You know what I mean? It's like to see her sitting there and like everyone's supposed to pretend that she's not there and she's just there now with John, and they're trying to write songs, but there's this presence and she's like interjecting and singing along and stuff. It's like, get the fuck out of here! It's the Beatles. You know what I mean? Get out. Have some respect. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is, yeah. It's a weird thing. It is. And it must be so awkward. And also, but also it's like people you've kind of grown up with and the people you work with, and
Yeah.
it must be very complicated. And I'm sure it still continues to be
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah, I think that they seem more at peace with even when they were like, they seem to be kind of more done with it than anyone else was. You know what I mean? We were all kind of, why don't you guys get back together? And they're like, nah, you know what I mean? They obviously just, lived an intense time together. Did 14 albums in 7 years. So
It's very impressive.
it is.
And also, like, they could only have made it worse, couldn't they? Like,
Yeah.
even if,
Yeah.
they did the right thing.
John did his best too with this album.
There you
As
go.
we'll see in this record.
In this, yeah. Let's walk over rainbows like leprechauns. The world will be one big Blarney Stone.
Fiddle-dee-dee.
It's like, but that is followed by, why the hell are the English there anyway? As they kill with God on their side, blame it all on the kids and the IRA as the bastards commit genocide. But if rainbows were like leprechauns, the world would be one big Blarney Stone.
Yeah.
What happened to that? It's very
There'd be
weird. song.
shamrocks all over the world.
Yeah, it's so odd. Yeah, very weird. Okay, so now we're going on to the final stop on our magical mystery tour through musical deprivation, and it is the earworm breeding grounds. Here, hell's most efficient oral assassins are hatched, and to ensure they grow up healthy and strong, Ray, we're going to need you to provide them with a track which, once stuck in your head, you can never get out. So what is this going to be?
Now, I love this band. This is the Carpenters, and it's Close to You.
Why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? Just like me, they long to be close to you.
Okay, Alex, can we have some facts about They Long to Be Close to You by Carpenters?
It was originally written by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. The best-known version of this song was recorded by the Carpenters for their second studio album, 1970's Close to You. It was released as a single in May of that year and reached the #1 spot on the US Billboard Hot 100, stayed there for 4 weeks. It was also #1 in Canada and Australia, whilst it got to #6 in both the UK and Ireland. It won the Carpenters the first of their 3 Grammy Awards. This one for Best Contemporary Performance by a Duo, Group or Chorus in 1971, and that was just one of 8 Grammy Awards that their album was nominated for that year.
Okay, so Ray, what is the story with "Close to You" by Carpenters?
Yeah, well, first of all, I love the song. You know what I mean? I love Bacharach, and I love that songwriting partnership with Hal David. Is it Hal David?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And I love that kind of songwriting time, where Bacharach and kind of, the Brill building and stuff, you know what I mean? There's a lot of like great songs came out of that. But this song in particular, it sticks in my head for a weird reason, because I had this French girlfriend from Marseille, she's a stunning girl. Now, as somebody who plays guitar and writes and performs music, like it gives you like a superpower when it comes to women. Sometimes, like you kind of, you're shooting way out of your league. You know what I mean?
Right.
Most times, and this was an example of that. She was gorgeous, but one day we were sitting at home and I put on some Carpenters and that song came on and she just jumped up kind of and went, dee, 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 dee. You like this band? Dee, 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 dee. You like this? Dee, 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 dee. I just kind of going, and I was looking at her going, you're disrespecting the Carpenters, first of all, so you're dumped.
Right.
And you clearly know nothing about music, you know what I mean? Because you can't do this, what do you do? And it's only years later, I was watching a Simpsons episode where they install a ringtone on their door and it gets stuck. And it was the Carpenters ringtone, and it was like dee 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 dee. So there's this. So she was referencing the Simpsons episode and didn't know who the Carpenters were at all. So I'm like, baby, come back!
What a mistake!
I know. But like in that moment, because she was mocking my love for the Carpenters, I was looking at her going, "You're dumped." I hadn't like actually said the words yet, but then the end of the relationship, But then years later, I'm like, no. So now anytime I hear the song go dee 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 dee, So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to hell for how we broke up actually, because it was one of those. Remember before, touch phones, if you sent an SMS to the wrong person or sent an SMS about a person to the person, you know what I mean? Kind of,
Yes.
you couldn't bring it back,
I
you
did
couldn't
that.
delete it,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was heading into town to break up with this girl, and a friend says, "Will you meet me for a pint after?" I said, "Yeah, I just got to go and break up with Florence," and broke up and sent a message to Florence.
Florence.
I mean,
So she's waiting me, but by the time I arrived in the bar, she was crying. Sorry?
It's a cleaner way of doing it. You sort of, job done.
Don't even bother turning up. She was crying already when I arrived at the bar, you know what I mean? It was like, oh, shit.
You just walk in, see her crying,
Right.
shrug and turn
I got the
around.
message. Okay, take it easy.
Fine. That's easy. All right, thank you. That guttural groaning is not some fiendish hellion. Rather, it is Tracy of the HR department, and it means she has your work placement ready, Ray. So while I go and consult with her, Alex, can you recap Ray's Infernal playlist for us?
Yes, indeed. A track that Ray is embarrassed he used to like is the Lady in Red by Chris de Burgh, a track universally adored that Ray cannot stand, Light My Fire by The Doors. A track that brings back a bad time in Ray's life is Can't Cry Hard Enough by the Williams Brothers. A track Ray hates by an artist he loves, The Luck of the Irish by John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And a track once stuck in Ray's head he can never get out is Brackets, They Long to Be, close brackets, Close to You by the Carpenters. Ray, which of these 5 songs would you least like to hear on repeat? Which is the absolutely most hellish of your hellish playlist?
The Luck of the Irish is if there was a room 101 somewhere, I don't know, but Yoko probably lives there.
Well, that can be arranged. So we will get Yoko and John to serenade you with The Luck of the Irish as you leave the waiting room today. Tracy says you are going to be working in the newspaper printing department of They're pandemonium
Wonderful.
times. There you go.
Wonderful.
We've also got a bit of clerical admin kind of boring office work for you to do as well, but mostly it's going to be lifting big bits of paper and
You're getting lots
as
of
in-
paper cuts. As it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
paper cuts, inky
Death
fingers.
by 1,000 paper.
Yeah, and we're going to make all the people you work with are just going to be really horrible.
Okay.
So we're going to really lay it on thick. So you're now going to be taken from this place and shot through a vacuum tube directly into the lowest circles of hell. When you get there, you'll be fitted with an amplifier backpack, which will play your infernal playlist wherever you go. But before that happens, is there anything you'd like to tell the listeners to check out?
Oh, yes. Come to find me on Instagram. I'm Ray J. Heffernan on Instagram, and you'll find my YouTube channel. If you look me up on YouTube, you'll find me. I'm recording an album this year, so what I'm doing is I'm uploading demos and just kind of I'm convinced that songs finish themselves in front of people. So I like to try new songs in different venues and stuff. So I'm trying to do that in a digital world. You know what I mean? To see what kind of, how they bounce back to me and stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm trying. So follow the songs. I'm putting up demos, and then I'll put up videos of the recording and how the songs change on the way. And I'm doing a vinyl this time. So I'm looking forward to that different process. You know.
Oh, brill. Well, we'll look out for that. And obviously we'll share it as well when it comes out. So do let us know, and we'll remind people about it when it does come. But now, Ray Heffernan, I have to tell you to go to hell. Hellish was written and presented by me, Daniel Whelan, and creator of the only quiz where people who already know the answers get them wrong, Alex Gale. You can support the show on patreon.com/hellishpod. Find us on social media at hellishpod, apart from Instagram, where it's hellish_pod. You can listen to all of Ray's tracks in full and our ongoing Ultimate Infernal playlist, bringing everyone's choices together at hellishpod on Spotify. And until next time, damn you all to hell.
God damn.